Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Property Investment Australia podcast. I am one of your co-hosts, Lachlan Vidler. I'm joined, as always, by Mr. Will Sanchez. Will, what has been happening, mate?
Yeah, same old. Working away from overseas, as you know.
Yep.
Yeah, things are getting better, improving. We reaching the end of the year, so no complaints. I've heard you've been super busy. Tell us about it.
Oh, mate, I certainly have. Obviously, everybody knows about the TV show that I've been working on as one of the team on that, Budget Battlers on Channel 9, and excitingly, we're now on air. We've had 2 episodes that have gone to air already. And we've been able to reach millions and millions of people, which has been absolutely fantastic. And the reviews on the show have been amazing as well. So it's going very, very well. It's obviously started to open up some other conversations for me now that I'm one of the Channel 9. I guess really I'm probably the only Channel 9 property investment expert at the moment. Mate, it's been awesome, but obviously super, super busy with everything that goes on with that.
Oh, I can imagine. Then please let us know how to send away some nice reviews to Channel 9, because I've seen you've got some sort of Brad Pitt in you.
So, that's very kind of you. That's very, very kind of you. Well, if everyone wants to see that Brad Pitt in me, 7:30 on Wednesdays. We're running through, I think the last episode is around the 26th of November. If that's not a Wednesday, then it's whatever sort of around there. So, this episode will come out on the day of episode 3. So, got a great run up going there. But, obviously Channel 9, I'm really enjoying working with Channel 9, and I think that they're also really enjoying, the work with me and obviously that whole team. Mate, it's fantastic. But enough about me. We have a very, very important episode to be cracking on with for this recording. And if you're happy, mate, I'll just tell the audience, tell the listeners.
Yeah, please.
What we're going on with.
Take it away.
Guys, today, the November buyer's edge, why waiting could cost you. I think that this is such an important episode for us to be getting out at the moment. It's such an important episode for all of you to be listening into, because I have to say, in all my years of doing this is a very, very interesting market and property market and overall economic situation that we're sitting in. That I don't know if we've seen a bit of a perfect storm of all these factors before. So we have a really, really important episode for everyone to listen into, with the big premise. I'll tell everyone up front, right? We only have 40 to 50 days left in this year, right? In this calendar year. And everyone knows people will also start to kind of slow down a little bit, right? But there is a real urgency that if you're in a position to be acting before Christmas, you really need to be doing that, because the property market is not slowing down at all. Not one bit. If anything, each week that goes by, it is continuing to get harder and harder and harder. And I guess the sort of self-reflective question I want to put out to everyone is, if back in January, you set yourself up and said, this year's going to be different, or this year I'm going to achieve, 1 or 2 or however many properties, but you sat back in January and in whatever way you said, this year I'm going to be achieving this, or this year it's going to be doing something a little bit different, and you're now sitting here, we're at the start of November, and you haven't quite ticked off those goals yet, especially around property, and you're in a position, or pretty close to being in a position, to be able to do it, you need to be taking action now. You really need to be. Will, what are you seeing right now on the finance front? Because we're seeing a few moving pieces going along with that as well.
Oh, mate, it's crunch time. It's that time of the year when we start getting emails left, right, and center from banks saying the cutoff times. If you've got an application, please send it in. We're going to work with reduced staff. You know how it is. You just got to make the move as soon as possible. We got to be very strategic what you do. when with the lender selection as well. We've seen a bank pull back from trust purchases. So there's some pretty good indicators coming out, which tells us it's just going crazy, right?
So
If you haven't made the move, you gotta call us
yeah. Well,
straight away.
we can just stay on that for a minute. What's your read? What's your perspective on those big changes that? So I guess there was technically two that came out from Macquarie Bank in the last week.
Oh, I
What's
haven't said
your
that.
what?
I haven't said that. How do you know?
What's your read on the situation? What's your perspective on it?
Oh man, I've always said, I've always mentioned about this, right? People come to us with the misconception that trust purchases is something you've got illimited or unlimited, infinite borrowing capacity.
Yeah.
Like I think just it's going to be a little bit tighter. Could be the lending towards trust. A similar situation happened a few years back with self-managed super fund. We had so many banks with that offering back then, and then the majority of banks start pulling out of with the offering, so retiring the product. So I think it could be some sort of indication that people are just using that strategy incorrectly, misconception, tightening on the lending. But still, there's so much opportunity out there. You just got to talk to people who understand the structure and the right structure for your situation. What are your thoughts?
I guess I'll tell you my thoughts in a second, but I guess the other part of that as well, though, that, obviously I'm not the broking side. I just get to see, have probably one of the best look-ins in the country to it. The other side of it, though, which I think a lot of people have sort of forgotten because naturally, news is always a little bit hysterical about stuff, is that it's just one lender who's just changed a policy. There are still a significant number of lenders out there that, and I guess what I'm getting at is that if you're in a position that investing through a trust or a corporate trustee or a company makes sense for you financially and you've had that correct advice around it, it's only one lender that's pulled back. And the reality is that they'll probably come back in a few months, if not whatever time period, because it is a sophisticated wealth creation vehicle. They might just put some extra limitations around it, or maybe it goes to their private wealth clients, whatever it might be. But I guess, ultimately there's still there's every single lender that was previously doing it is still there except one.
Yeah, but still, in just to answer what you're mentioning as well, there are so many other lenders, who are really, really good for investment, for investors. And some don't even have buffers, policies that don't add buffers to any servicing calculation. So you gotta know how to use that strategy, towards or in your favor, I should say.
Yeah.
Right. In fact, we've got a mutual client right now, where we had to explore that lending strategy. I won't mention his name, but very smart.
His name,
very smart.
already a giveaway. We're now down to 50% of clients. No, mate.
I never know, mate.
No, I agree with you, and I guess my read on the whole situation is that, look, at the end of the day, it was a very, very loose liberal policy that Macquarie was applying. At the end of the day, it was right. You could do self declarations of the accounting position of the trust. And at the end of the day, everyone's known it. Macquarie's been on an absolute tear for the last, pretty much since COVID, of trying to win mortgage business from the banks, right? And to me, I think that there's a little bit of common sense that needs to be applied here. Macquarie has also just been smashed around these managed fund scandals over the last couple of weeks as well, last couple of months, where they were, they had products on some of their investment platforms that then have ended up going bust, and people have lost a lot of money, right? And naturally, I'm sure, as just, world according to me, I'm sure that the relevant, government bodies are probably going to go after Macquarie to some degree, and they're probably going to cop a fine for a lack of due diligence and a lack of risk management and all the rest. So Macquarie is already probably feeling a little bit of the heat from a risk management point of view because of that. They've been chasing all this mortgage business for years and years and years, and they've taken a huge chunk out of the big four, right? Very successfully. And they've done that through, having some policies that, world according to me is we have a very, very robust financial system in Australia, right? And some policies like, for example, what we saw with the trust lending with Macquarie was, Australia showing a bit of a looser method of operating compared to how tight and rigid we are. And I think that sometimes we're actually extremely risk averse in Australia, right? Don't get me wrong. I think it's really good. I think it protects the consumers. It protects everyday people from making very poor financial decisions. But I also think that there's a common sense approach, which is that, sometimes there is a risk and reward that goes on, right? And we have some of the safest financial systems and a property market in the world. And I think that, my perspective is what Macquarie was doing was actually just injecting a little bit of risk into their own, balance sheet effectively, right? And their appetite, right? And I think that now you combine that, a few external factors, obviously the fact that, some people were really misusing that policy and all the rest, and they've just gone and tightened the tap a little, And I think that at the end of the day, a bank is there to make money.
What you're saying is it could be a point in time situation, right? They could very well turn around and.
That is my perspective. Like you think,
I don't disagree.
Right? If you take a common sense approach for 2 seconds and you go, one of the biggest 4, if not 5 banks in Australia, which has a huge global reputation as well, because they have a huge presence in the US. They want to continue growing what they're doing. Banks make the most money out of lending money. Does anyone seriously think that from now to the end of time, Macquarie is now going to continue restricting trust and corporate lending? Not a chance. I'm not saying it's solved in 2 months. I'm not saying it's solved in 2 years. But I cannot, in good faith, with just some common sense, see Macquarie going, no, we're done. Forever. We're now done. So anyway, that is not the point of our episode, but very topical news, I think very important for us to kind of talk about it. But I think what I'd love to do, mate, is I'd love to give people a bit of a perspective of what we're seeing in the market, a bit of stats, a bit of, a bit of what's on the ground, because this whole episode is about, your November buyer's edge and why waiting could cost you. But I think we've got to talk to everybody about, showing them why waiting could cost them, right? So
yep, absolutely. Take it away.
I'll tell you what I'm saying is these are tough conditions, right? And I'm a professional in this space, right? And I'm saying these are tough conditions. If you're somebody that's doing this either professionally as a side hobby after work or just your own personal investment journey, a few hours after work, it is tough for us going in all day, every day with a property team, because the tightness of supply has only continued constricting, almost like a bit of a, like a boa constrictor, the big snake that squeezes their prey and they swallow them whole. That's a bit of what the property market's doing right now. The property market is squeezing everybody so tight. And then they're just swallowing up the people that are making really poor choices. And I'm seeing.
But on the other hand,
right?
On the other hand, it's helping the ones with properties, right?
Well, so it is, right? It is.
Yeah,
but I guess
happening to the prices.
I guess right now, I'll touch on that in a second. I guess for me right now, I'm very concerned about the people who aren't taking their action for nothing other than their own laziness, their own, I'm too busy, right? Especially when there's people, like Atlas out there who are there to take, 80 or 90% of that burden away from them, right? Now, this is what I'm saying on the ground, right? Some of the markets we're investing in, and we invest, as most people know, right? We invest across, a large number of the capital cities where it makes sense to do so. And then we invest across a large amount of the regional cities, and often they might have 80, 100, 200 plus 1,000 people living there. So we're talking about, we're not talking about, the random towns in the middle of nowhere, right? Big, robust regionals. I always feel like I've got to justify it because there's always just this perception. But these are the places that have airports, universities, hospitals, all the rest, right? So very big built up cities. Across both of them, right, we are seeing probably the most heat in the big regionals, right? Capitals definitely have some heat, do not get me wrong, but the big regionals, we are seeing huge heat in them. The capitals are just always having heat, right? We are seeing, and I was looking at the stats. I was looking at the stats on Sunday. I was putting a deal together. I was actually putting 2 deals together for 2 or 3 different clients on Sunday, just gone Sunday, right? When I
On a
was looking at,
Sunday, should be
mate,
resting, mate.
nah, mate, there's no time to rest at the moment, even for us, right? We're seeing market movement upwards of 1.5% to 2% per month, right? So what that means is if you've got a market, right, that is being priced at, say, 600,000, right? You got a, you're looking at a property that's going at $600,000, right? You could be moving anywhere between $10,000 and $15,000 per month, right?
Yeah, it's the biggest growth in the last 2 years, right?
Obviously every market is different, but it is just insane, right? And the thing is that we're then having to come in and try and justify the purchase of properties at a value where, don't forget, the data lags. The data is often lagging a month. So we're seeing properties where we're like, we from the data we can access, and we have access to more data than almost anyone else because of some of our special partnerships with certain organizations. But then even then, that data is still a month in the rear view mirror, right? So we're then still having to find ways to justify it, looking at the rate of change in performance and things like that. So, I'll give you a story, right? I know of a number of buyers agencies out there right now where we're stopping at price X, and they're going and adding 50K on top of us just to secure property, right? I can tell you, there is no good conscience in that. There is no investment value in that. Even though there's the argument of getting in the market is better than being out of the market, and to an extent, that's obviously true. These people, and there are some reputable businesses, that have, lots of good reviews doing this. This isn't about throwing shade at them, right? This is just, and that's why I'm not going to name any of them. This is about trying to illustrate the reality to people, which is that the market is moving so quickly, and people who are professionals in this space, aren't always doing the right thing either. And they're putting, 30, 40, 50K on top of where a fair value for these properties are. And that's because we are seeing such a supply shortage, So what do you think is going to happen, my good friend, for those people that are waiting on the sidelines?
Well, if you don't make the move, my dear listeners, you're going to miss out. You're going to regret later. You got to get in, make the move, make a decision. Yeah, it's true. Because even for us, man, we deal with a number of agents, right? Buyers agents around the country as well. And we've noticed some of them can't convert. Some of them are letting out pre-approvals expired twice. So it is happening. It's true. It's happening. Good agents, right? But we've seen some numbers come back high as well, saying, "Oh, geez, really? This property for that much?" So yeah. So at the end of the day, if the valuation stacks up, then it is what it is, right?
Right, of course. And I think that really goes into what we're talking about with this episode, which is that the cost of waiting right now is absolutely enormous, right? Like, we're seeing valuations. You see a lot of valuations that our clients get when they're coming back around after 6 or 12 months or whatever it is, and I would say the vast majority of them are seeing in excess of 20% value increases, and some of them are even getting upwards of 20% in just 6 months because of what's going on, right? And I mean, I can tell you,
I've noticed. You don't let me breathe. You don't let me breathe. You buy a property for a client of mine. In 6 months, they're coming back. They're asking for me to get an equity withdrawal. I said, guys, let me breathe, please.
Right? It's but that's the thing, right? And that's what's happening with people who are actually, taking the action on it. But I can tell you, right? Victorian markets right now, very, very, very warm. Very, very warm. You know, like what we're dealing with in the Victorian market space is the yields are a little bit more compressed, right? That is still a reality, even though there is big demand. I'll be honest, I'm not quite sure why. I think it's just because predominantly the rapid increase in the value of property that we're seeing down there, but yields are staying relatively compressed, you know, and that's in both, you know, like if you're looking in the vicinity of Melbourne, you know, your best case is probably a 4% yield on the dot. If you're in some of the bigger regionals, you know, you're seeing around that kind of 4.5% rental yields, you know, of course you can get a bit of movement, you know, there are always isolated examples, but, you know, we're very consistently seeing, you know, properties around that sort of 4.5% in the regionals of Victoria, or at least the ones that make sense being in. And you're also noticing bigger expenses that comes out of that as well, because, you know, Victorian government is slapping everyone with, you know, more taxes, and, you know, they're also needing to, you know, continually increase the standard of property, which, you know, on one hand is good. We don't want tenants living in bad properties, but, you know, on some other hands, it's also taking away some of the autonomy of property investors to be able to, you know, let the fair market decide, you know, like your property is in a little bit worse condition than someone else's. So, you know, I won't stand on my soapbox on that, but that's what we're seeing in a lot of the Victorian markets. We get up to the Queensland markets, and, you know, Queensland markets, like their yields have compressed. You know, a lot of Queensland markets, they had plus 5% yields at the start of the year, and they're also now getting down into the fours. What we noticed with the Queensland markets is that whilst the yields might be just that touch better at the moment, you know, you might have some slightly higher costs, like say around insurance or things like that. But then it's balanced out by going, you know, some of your government costs are also a little bit cheaper, you know, so, you know, you can end up in a sort of similar position. But then we're also seeing other markets like Perth. You know, Perth had a flatten out, and then Perth is back on a bit of a tear, you know, and then we're seeing, you know, market like Adelaide, very, very stable performer, you know, like it's just every year, it's just consistent performance, because there's a big drive to live, you know, in places like that where it's a good, easily accessible city, pretty clean. There are jobs, you know, seeing government invest there as well. And then, you know, Sydney's just a little bit too expensive for us to be looking at properly, and all the rest. But I guess that's what we're seeing a little bit on the ground, right?
You never know, my friend. You never know. We spoke, I think we spoke about this maybe 4 years ago or something. And I said, mate, doesn't Perth make sense? And at the time, I think it didn't. But then all of a sudden, things just moved, and that's the nature of the job, right? You're there preparing for where it makes sense. If the numbers stack up, then we're there, right? If it doesn't, then not for us.
And that's the thing, right? That's why, you know, we're in a very blessed position, because we do have access to data that, you know, the vast majority of if not probably, almost all buyers agencies don't have access to. And I'm sure there's people sitting back there thinking, oh yeah, okay, I'm sure you're just using some platform that everyone else is using. But I can tell you we're not, because we get the raw data in the spreadsheets, as I think I've talked about it before. You know, we get the raw data in the spreadsheets at a huge scale. You know, we get millions of data points every month from the biggest property houses, and we spend significant money to do that, because it's what allows us to be positioned ahead, right? And what we're seeing is just the fact of kind of like you're talking about, you know, even markets that sort of took a bit of a breath, you know, at the start of this year or end of last year, they're now firing back to life, because we're seeing things like the first home buyer changes. We're seeing things like the supply just continues to constrict very, very rapidly. We've also had the, you know, interest rates come down, and whilst now, you know, there's probably quite a bit of not concern, but like, you know, there's quite a lot of confidence that we might be towards the end of this cycle now, just based on some inflation data and other economic data. The reality is we've still seen, you know, good interest rate drops and all the rest. So, if you're not on the cutting edge with the right data and the right information, you are being left behind, or you're missing out, because you're not able to justify making purchases that other people are able to justify. And that's just the cold, hard reality of it as well, you know? So, right, that's my thoughts on the market. Have you got any other comments on that before we keep moving through our big plans for this episode?
No, let's keep moving.
Keep moving.
Let's keep moving. Absolutely. Oh, you've said it all.
Said it all, my friend. Said it all. Well, what I now want to talk about, you know, and I'll be very, very transparent to everyone listening, right? I want you to come and
Oh,
talk.
drum rolls.
I want you to come and talk to us because I know obviously you're going to pay us a fee and we're going to help you, right? So there's no sales pitch here in that respect that's thinly veiled, right? You're going to pay us a fee and we're going to help you. But here's the thing, right? There's still time for this year, but only if you start now, right? You got to start now. And whilst I've now, put the sales pitch to the side, so there's nothing thinly veiled about it. For both Will and I, our biggest vested interest is the fact that we hate it when people come and chat with us. And it's not whether they work with us specifically or not. And I know I'm talking for you when I say this, but I know it's true because we've talked about it so many times. Our biggest thing that we hate is when people just do nothing. People do absolutely nothing. We have so many people that reach out to us from this podcast. And so many of them say, if we wanted to work with a buyer's agent or a mortgage broker or whatever, we would have worked with you guys. But we've decided to go out on our own. We've got a good relationship with our bank, or we've decided to find property by ourselves. And we get so many people that reach out to us that actually say something like that. And we always, we're always emailing them back, or if they've given us a call, we always talk to them and we always say, we're just so happy that our show has helped you to take action and give confidence with that, right? But the reality of the situation right now is November's a pressure window, isn't it, mate? It's a big pressure window, but things can still happen. Talk to us a little bit about the finance side, about why it's still, now is still a good time, but the action needs to be taken. What do we see on the finance front from now on?
Yeah, well, like I mentioned before, we're approaching the end of the year. Cutoff times are starting to appear. So the banks usually want to see applications, approvals by a certain date. Obviously, because they all work with short staff. So you got to be strategic. You got to understand. Some banks have longer approval times as well. So you got to make sure you understand the bank before obviously when you convert on a property, and then you're submitting your formal approval. You got to understand what your SLA is, because at the end of the day, if you negotiate, your buyer's agent negotiates on a finance clause for you, and then you go with the bank that has a 20-day approval, and it does happen, especially at this time of the year, then you find yourself in a bit of a pickle, because then you need to extend the finance clause. Then it creates issues for everyone. Then people don't want to waste time because it's the end of the year. Our solicitors tend to stop working around that 20th, 21st or thereabouts as well. Yeah. Good brokers like our team at Oz and Newtown, we work all the way through, even New Year's Eve. Like I had a client, I kid you not, on the 31st last year, 31st of December, I was working with them. 31st, if I'm not mistaken, or 30th or something. It was one of the very last days of the year. So we still work. We help clients, especially when there's a very unique circumstance that we need to help. We are always there, right? You can call us. It's not an issue. We've got a staff dedicated to work throughout the break. But like I said, you got to be very strategic. You got to understand before you make a decision, because don't just go in blindly and make a decision, make a selection. Be strategic.
So when do banks tend to have their cutoffs for submission? Just very broadly for people to understand.
Well, it depends. It depends. Some people stop accepting pre-approvals because they've got a big backlog. So if you have it, if you haven't received your formal approval by a certain date as well, they want you to stop. If you have, for example, now talking about first-home buyers, if you haven't, and then you apply for the scheme, if you haven't got your scheme approved by a certain date, too bad. So there's a lot of intricacies when you're looking at finance.
Do we have a typical period though? Like, we want to give value to everyone listening in. Is there a typical cutoff period before the Christmas break where the banks will say, "Nah, wait and submit it"? But when we get to January.
I would say around that week prior.
Week prior, yeah. So I think
Yeah,
this year
week prior.
that's the Friday the 19th. So you're sort of saying like
And
probably
it's a Friday. And it's a
yeah,
Friday, right?
yeah.
It's
Because I think
Friday then.
what's that? Christmas must be a Wednesday roughly. Then if we're at the 19th, trying to do my quick maths,
And
26
then
would
and
be
then and obviously you have to align your settlement.
yeah
Um yeah,
afterwards. Yeah,
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 absolutely. So
yeah,
you gotta be very strategic on the negotiation. Because remember, you got a head start if your agent or if you're able to negotiate on a much faster settlement.
yeah,
Because then you're ahead of the game.
yeah. No, absolutely. Well, that's I think that's really good info for everyone in terms of the property market, right? Like why there's time, but if you start now, the reality is that like this has been a tough year for a lot of agents, right? Real estate agents, not buyers agents, real estate agents, right? Where because supply or stock for them has been so tight, a lot of them have obviously had like record years. They've sold properties for more than they ever have before. But, I think a lot of them would have liked to have transacted on more property, but it's obviously just been a struggle to be able to get access to have that. So a lot of agents that we're talking to are talking about the fact that like, where normally that sort of maybe first or second week of December is when they'll sort of start to wind things down a little bit, clear out what's left, but not really actively, kind of bring anything else in. A lot of them are talking about how they really want to drive it through to the end of the, well, not end of the Christmas period, but like, before we hit Christmas, because they want their numbers to look really good, and that they feel very incentivized to kind of, transact a little more because, they've worked very hard this year and some of them haven't been able to have the results they would have liked for that because it's been very tough. So, there is that chance to kind of jag some deals. And of course, for them, they want to get the best for their seller, their vendor, but they're also motivated to take common sense approaches with that too. So I think that there is a really good opportunity from that property front, and I think as well that like a lot of them would love to have certain things locked up, in moving into the new year, so knowing, hey, I've got my January booked out for settlements already, things like that. So, there is that time still there to go. We probably have a good, 6 or 7 weeks, that's kind of left to do that, or maybe 5 to 6 weeks. But it's all about taking that action, right? And I think for me, the way that I always think about it is I want to know what that cost of waiting is, because for those people that are sitting back going, it's probably too hard. It's really busy going to the end of the year, or, you know what, I've had a big year. I just kind of can't be bothered, right? I want to really play out for you guys that are listening, right? What happens, right? So in terms of the kind of qualitative, not the quantitative, the qualitative reality of waiting, right? So what I mean by that is I'm not going to give you numbers. This is more just sort of, a bit philosophically what's going to happen, right? If you wait all the way through Jan, right, this is what's going to happen. Your bank pipelines are going to be full because everybody, same as how everyone commits to getting fit and healthy in the new year, everybody goes and jumps in. I'm sure you can vouch for this, Will. Everyone goes and jumps in and puts their pre-approvals in, and the banks get absolutely smashed in January with applications, right? And that's from a lot of applications of people that are never going to transact, but they're in that almost like their gym equivalent of, if I go submit it, then I'm doing something, right? So the banks are going to be smashed, so your timelines are going to blow out in that respect, right? Buyers are going to be coming into the market and they're going to be coming in extremely rapidly, and they're not necessarily serious buyers, right? But it doesn't matter if they're not serious. If they're there putting in offers and effectively bidding up the price, I'm not just talking about auctions. I'm talking about, even when you're going back and forth in multiple offer situations, that puts the price up. And there is a real tangible cost that comes from that by coming in. And there is going to be more competition. And what ends up coming from that is that the prices rise extremely rapidly over Q1, right? Extremely rapidly over Q1, right? So I now want to give you the quantitative, right? If you don't take action now and you wait for January, this is what's going to happen, right? First and foremost, January can be a little bit of a harder month to buy properties because a lot of agents, like we all know, Australia Day is often a bit of a point in time when people are really back into it, right? Like I tell you, the Atlas team, we're going to be back into it from the 5th of January, right? We're going to be in there. But at the end of the day, for us, we can still only do what's around, right? I know Will and his team, like you said, they're going to work through, but they're also going to be more or less back on deck properly from the 5th of January, right? I assume. I'm putting words in his mouth, but I assume, right? But there's still going to be a bit of a slow burn, as always happens in every job and every industry, right? So let's say that you then start engaging conversations with, let's say, a buyer's agent, right? Let's say you come and engage with Atlas, right? Let's say that, you put in your first inquiry on the 5th of Jan. Let's say we have a chat to you on the 6th or 7th of Jan initially. We then have a follow-up meeting with you, maybe a few days later. So let's say that maybe it's like the 12th of Jan, you've gone through your meetings with the Atlas team, the guys that are there, they're going to give you a great meeting. I can tell you that much for free, right? Then let's say, fair enough, you want to shop around a little bit. You want to have a chat to a few other buyers agents, right? So let's say you then spend another week or two setting up a few more meetings, right? Just making sure that Atlas really was the right guys for you, because obviously we will be, we all know that. Obviously saying a little bit tongue in cheek,
Channel
right?
9, what do we
Right?
expect?
We're a Channel 9 property investment expert for a reason, right? But no, we say that a little bit tongue in cheek, right? But let's say it takes you another week or two, right? So now we're pretty much up around Australia Day, and you go, you know what? We are going to work with the Atlas guys, right? But then, you go, hey, can you introduce us to Will? We need to get our finance sorted. Will and his team smash it out. They go very, very quickly. They get it done. But let's say it's now the first week of February, right? Is that now your finance application's done, right? You want us to do your portfolio planning and all the rest. You want to look at our area reports. It takes a bit of time to do all that. So let's say it's now the middle of Feb that we're like, you know what? Let's have a proper start to the search. It might then take, a month or two to find you guys a good quality asset. Because, fair enough, we also have other clients that signed on before you, and I say that just being very transparent and open. No, everyone wants it done yesterday, but, we've got other clients that would have taken action, before Christmas, right? So the reality is it might take us, a month or two to find you a really good deal and close it, because that's the other side. We've got to close the deal, and it's got to be a good deal, right? So now you're talking about March or April to get your deal done. And I said property prices are moving at around 2%. So if we go 2% in Jan, 2% in Feb, 2% in March, you're at 6%, right? Let's add a little bit of a compounding factor into that. And let's say you're looking at we'll say you're looking at a 625K property. Let's say it would be 6%. We'll add a 0.5% for a bit of compounding value. A little bit of the fact price will rise a little bit more rapidly, right? So let's say that we're going at 6.5%. Your $625,000 property is now pushing towards $670,000, right? And that's the nature of the beast, right? Prices move over time. But by waiting until January to reach out, and that doesn't even include November and December in that, right? I could take that even further, right? If I went and added 2% for November and 2% for December, that's actually then going to take us to 10. We'll compound 11%, an extra 1% to take it up to 11, right? You're now at 6. You're now at almost 700,000. So there you go. You want to know what the true cost of waiting to start your conversations in January? Your true cost of waiting is probably $75,000. So, do you want to lose $75,000? Or do you want to jump in now and start those conversations? All right? That's the true cost. What do you think about that, my friend? I was a bit on the fly. We didn't even talk about me doing that, but there you go. That
was amazing. That was amazing. I'm gonna sign up. You just got me hooked up.
We've got to actually get your next property. So you and I are going to have to chat
that
to
is
get
true.
that one done.
That is true.
But
Indeed. But it's good, man. I think you hit the nail on the head, because that gives us, us and everyone a good sense of what it means waiting around. Like, if you've got the chance, booking your appointment, have a chat right now. Get ahead, get it done. Doesn't matter. Don't wait, because nothing is gonna happen straight away. It's not like by signing or paying for a fee or getting a pre-approval means the property is gonna come on your lap. It takes time. Everything takes time. So just start now.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly right. Well, guys, we're gonna wrap up the episode with a few final comments, right? So, what is it you can do from now? Well, what you can do from now is, as soon as this episode stops playing, go and put an inquiry in on the Atlas website to talk to us, or go and put an inquiry in on the Aussie Newtown website and have a chat with Will, right? That is The first and best thing you can do. I'm not even going to say, if you want to have a chat with us, come and do it. I'm going to say, you want a real call to action? The real call to action is, if you want to make yourself $75,000, as soon as this episode finishes, go and put your inquiry in, right? Call that blunt, call that forward, call that a bit salesy. I don't really care. That is the reality of it, right? That is the first and best thing you can do, because now you've got experts that are going to be along your side, pushing you along and getting you moving, right? That is the first and biggest thing that you can do. But the next thing that you can do is, if you are legitimately and genuinely not ready for that, you need to sit down and understand why you aren't and how long you think it is going to be until you are ready. And I'll give you a hot tip. If it's within the next 3 months, go and drop an inquiry for Atlas and go and drop an inquiry for Aussie Newtown, because we can still be along for your journey in the next 3 months. And I can tell you, the amount of people who come and think that they're not ready, but they think that they're very close. The reality is they actually are ready. And by the time we do a few other hoops of different things, if there was something that wasn't ready, it's going to be fine. Okay. So if you reckon you're within the next 3 months, still come and have a chat with us, right? If you think you're longer than 3 months, write down a plan. Write down a plan of what you need to do. And then when you think you're 3 months away, then come and engage with us, right? Because early engagement is so much better. And it means that we can actually make sure we set you up right, okay? If you are not looking at working with us, well, that's a little sad. You listen to our content. You don't want help from the Channel 9 property investment expert. That's okay. That's fine. We still love what we do, and we'll still let you listen in, right? But if you're going to go work with somebody else, or you have been working with somebody else, go and still take action with the way that we're saying it, right? But otherwise, the most important thing is to get all your ducks in a row, okay? You have a chance to finish 2025 exactly how you said to yourself at the start of 2025 you wanted to end. But you've got to be the one to take that action. We can't do that for you. All right. So with that, if you'd like to come and have a chat with myself and the team at Atlas Property Group, right? Channel 9, investment experts and all, there is a reason why we're on primetime national TV. And there is a reason why our properties are going up 20% in 6 months, and why they're doing even more than that in 12 months. And of course, it doesn't happen for everyone. It just happens for quite a lot of our clients. Come and have a chat with us, right? atlaspropertygroup.com.au. You can even see a little bit of content from Budget Battlers on Channel 9 on our website as well. Come and have a chat with us. And if you need help on that finance side, Aussie Newtown, you can find the link to the website for Will and his contact details, as well as mine, in the bio of this episode and the show. Go and have a chat with them about the finance. But please, we're approaching the end of the year. Don't let yourself get in your own way. Let us help you out. But until then, guys, drop us those 5-star reviews. We love you listening in so very much. Please continue to send us content suggestions. Will, any final comments from you?
Absolutely. The thing that I love the most is getting an email from the listeners saying, I love the podcast. Thank you. Can you help us? I love that. Please,
You love that?
go out. Yeah, send us an email and say you're a good listener. We'll help you out.
Oh, mate, I love that. Well, thank you, everyone. You've heard. Drop us the emails, drop us the 5 stars, drop us the inquiries. We can't wait to be back with you in a few more weeks. Don't forget to tune in Wednesday night, 7:30 on Channel 9 for me featuring on Budget Battlers. We have made a lot of value out of not a lot of money on that show. I think after 2 episodes, we're up to almost 400,000 of value that's been created out of just 20 grand of renovation. So come and have a chat with us. But until next time, guys, thank you very much. We'll be back with you soon.
Thank you.
This is a Piccolo podcast production.